It's been quite the interesting year for movies in the year of 2023. What is happening, guys? Back at you with another video. So we finally get to the video of the top 10 movies of 2023. And it's definitely been quite the interesting year. There's been some hits, but there's also been some misses. So these are just going to be the top 10 movies of 2023. This is my personal opinion. This is what I think are the top 10 of the year. And really, there's different contributing factors on how I actually listed these top 10 movies. Basically, is how good the movie actually is, how good the story of the movie is. Does the movie have great rewatchability? And movies I just genuinely liked this year. But without further ado, let's get into this list of the top 10 of 2023. Now, I will say this before I start that choices 6 through 10 were definitely hard to choose, but really the top 5 were kind of easy for me to choose. Starting off with number 10 is going to be Creed 3. Now, I haven't seen too many people talking about this movie too much, but I think this is a solid addition to the whole Rocky and Creed franchise. We get Michael B. Jordan in his directorial debut with this movie, and I think he brings some interesting things to this movie especially when it comes to like the Rocky and Creed franchise. The way it's shot, his creative ideas. I think it's definitely some interesting choices and bringing something new to the whole franchise. He heavily stated that anime was definitely an influence when it came to shots in this movie. And if you are an anime fan, you watch anime, you can kind of see those things, especially when it came to the last boxing match. This one's probably not the best Creed movie, but I definitely think it's a solid addition to the whole franchise. A great directorial debut by Michael B. Jordan, and one of my favorites of the year. So I'm interested in seeing where they take the franchise next. At the number 9 spot, we get to a horror movie that I actually liked this past year, and that is Talk to Me. Now, I'm a casual horror movie fan, and I don't really check out every single horror movie that comes out each year, and this one was kind of not on my radar. Really, the reason why I even checked it out was because somebody wanted me to go check it out with them. And really, after watching this movie, checking it out in theaters, I was really kind of amazed by this movie. The way that this movie was able to take a premise that we've pretty much seen a lot of times before, but be able to flip it and make it its own. And to be able to just make this movie and just have you feel uneasy and creeped out. And when it comes to horror movies, for me, there are certain things I want to be able to feel during a horror movie. And this movie gave me those feelings. Gave me the feelings of uneasiness and being creeped out and just being kind of like just being in this movie and actually like liking this movie. When it comes to a horror movie, I think they do a lot of great things in this movie. But especially the ending definitely is something that was kind of weird, but also like really good. The way that it leaves it up to your imagination, and sort of up to your interpretation. And after watching the movie, just feeling like, wow. So I'm definitely interested in checking out the second part once they release that. But this one was definitely a top horror movie of the year. Coming in at the number 8 spot and kind of surprised this year was Gran Turismo. Now, when it comes to video game adaptation movies, they're not always the greatest. But it turns out for the year 2023, we actually had 2 good ones. And one of them actually being Gran Turismo. Now, this one I actually recently checked out a few days ago. And I gotta say, I was definitely surprised by this movie. Now, the way they're able to have this movie actually be a video game adaptation and be having a backdrop of based on a true story was actually done pretty well. Really, with this movie, it comes across more as a sort of feel-good underdog story with the different ways that it was shot, especially when it comes to some of the races, the way the directing is in here. And really, one of the things I liked about this movie was having the whole simulation of the game actually being submerged within the real world. So it almost looks like you're a part of the game or like being in the game itself. So really, I really did enjoy this movie from the different things they're able to do. And I believe this movie is definitely worth a check out, even if you're not a Gran Turismo fan. Overall, it's just a great feel-good underdog story. Coming at the number 7 spot, I'm going to put Air. Now, this one was actually a pleasant movie that I actually ended up liking. I was definitely interested with the whole story concept. And really with this movie, you basically know the ending. If you know anything about shoes and Michael Jordan and Jordan's shoes, then you know the ending. But the way that this movie is actually playing itself out is that it gives you the story before the ending. So it does a lot of details, does a lot of things, and shows you a lot of things that you may not exactly know about the story leading up to the ending. And honestly, just being a fan of Michael Jordan and the Jordan shoes, this was definitely a nice movie to see. Just the whole overall story, being able to see how it all unfolds, being able to see the struggles, and basically sort of being a feel-good movie. This one is definitely one of my favorites of the year. Coming at the number 6 spot for me is going to be John Wick Chapter 4. Now, I like the other John Wick movies, so I was definitely looking forward to this next chapter in the John Wick franchise. And with this movie, it definitely did not disappoint. When it comes to a John Wick movie, you expect some great action scenes, action set pieces, and this one definitely delivers on that. A lot of great action in this movie. The choreography was really well done. And with this one being the longest John Wick film, almost at 3 hours long, I honestly didn't feel the runtime with this one. Like, I was engaged with the whole story, and of course engaged with John Wick's story and all these other different characters that we get within the John Wick movie. We had a great villain with Bill Skarsgård, but some of these side characters that we get in this movie are also really invested in. I really enjoy this movie. Like, it's definitely one of my favorites of the year. And if this happens to be the last movie in the John Wick franchise, I think it's a good ending to the story. And coming at the number 5 spot for me is going to be Oppenheimer. Now, with this movie, I think this one is definitely a great achievement in film. The way that Christopher Nolan was able to give us this movie, just the way it's shot, just the way it's directed, just the way that he was just able to give us this movie, and it turns out to be amazing. Pretty amazing story, but when it comes to this movie, it's very conversational, where it's mostly driven by the characters themselves and how they carry the conversation. So it's brilliantly written when it comes to dialogue. Really, I would say the only thing that holds this movie back for me is rewatchability. This is a long movie, clocking in at 3 hours long. So I just don't know when I'll watch it again. I'm not against watching it again. Like, I would watch this movie again. I just don't know exactly if or when I will. But when it comes to this movie, Christopher Nolan did an amazing job. It's a great achievement in film. And it is definitely one of the top 10 of the year. Coming at the number 4 spot for me is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I was really looking forward to this third installment to the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, and this one did not disappoint. Definitely arguably the best in the trilogy. Just the way that James Gunn was able to bring us this movie and be able to close out and have this finale on the trilogy and be able to just see this closing out of the story of these characters. The way he was able to put us on this emotional roller coaster of a ride in this movie. When it comes to movies that get me very choked up or cry, it's not very many. I can honestly count them on my hand, the movies that actually did that to me. And it turns out that this one was one of them. Just the way you're able to feel for these characters during this movie, especially when it comes to the story of Rocket. Being able to feel like these characters are like an actual family. And being able to get this amazing finale to this trilogy and to the story of these characters. Just honestly, I love this movie. Definitely one of my favorites of the year. I love this movie so much. Also has an amazing soundtrack. This one is definitely one of my favorites of the year, and I believe it's a top 10. Coming at the number 3 spot for me is going to be Godzilla Minus One. And this one was totally a surprise when it comes to this year. Now, I've grown up on watching some of the Japanese Godzilla movies. I haven't seen many over the past few years, but I always remember my childhood when I used to watch some of these movies. And this one was totally surprised when it comes to how amazing this movie actually is. And to be able to crack into my top 10 of the year. Now, when it comes to some of the American Godzilla movies, especially the most recent ones we've been getting, those characters' stories I'm not really invested in. Like, I don't even go to those movies for the characters or anything like that. I'm going to those movies just to see the action, just to see the big kaiju battles. And the character story, honestly, don't like it. But this one does something different. This one puts the character story and makes you feel for the characters at the forefront. And just so happens to have Godzilla as a backdrop. The way you're able to get this story with these characters and actually be able to feel for these characters, see this character development go on. Especially when it comes to the main character who's dealing with survival's guilt. But really, the main thing with this one, Godzilla is a straight up monstrous villain. I like it. I like it so much in this one. Just the way you're able to see Godzilla terrorize the city and wreak havoc and just be the straight up monster. The way what this movie plays out where you're actually feeling for the characters, so whenever Godzilla comes around, you're actually fearing for their lives and fearing for those characters. It was such an amazing story with this movie going on. One of my favorites of the year, definitely. And the way they had the third act battle brought me back to my childhood where you hear the Godzilla theme blazing and them going up against the Godzilla. Oh man, it was so awesome. So this one was definitely a surprise this year. It's amazing. Awesome. I just enjoyed and loved this movie so much. Coming at the number 2 spot for me is going to be The Iron Claw. Now, if you had told me at the beginning of the year that I was actually going to be choked up or feel very emotional or even be on the brink of tears with more than one movie this past year, I wouldn't have believed you. But this is one of the movies of the year that actually brought me close to tears. The way that this movie was able to just make you emotionally devastated, but also just be invested in this story and be invested in seeing how this family is. Now, being a wrestling fan, I of course knew of the Von Erich family and just the tragedy that their family had dealt with. But of course, I didn't really know every exact detail or everything that went on. So being able to check out this movie, I was definitely interested in checking it out and seeing how that whole story came to be, how that whole story plays out. And the way this movie just gives us this story of this family and being able to see the tragedy behind this whole family and what they dealt with, what they went through, and just being able to be emotionally devastated, being emotionally invested within this movie. Just really seeing the whole outcome and being able to see these brothers, just be a family, just have being able to see how close they were with each other. Like, it makes you feel for them. It makes you like feeling, you just feel it with this movie. Zac Efron gives one of his best performances in this movie, but also too the rest of the cast gives amazing performances. As a wrestling fan, I like some of the things they're able to do within this movie, just seeing the wrestling aspects. But honestly, even if you're not a wrestling fan, I think you could actually be able to enjoy this movie and actually feel something with this movie and be able to see the tragedy within this movie. Like, this movie definitely got me choked up, but when it comes to the ending and some of the final lines in the movie, it definitely emotionally broke me. This one was definitely a tragic story, but an amazing movie. One of my favorites of the year. I honestly like this movie so much. And it's definitely one of the best movies of the year. But coming in at the number 1 spot for me is going to be Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So some of the things for me that makes this the number 1 movie is the rewatchability on this movie. This is my most rewatched movie of the year of 2023. I've probably seen it a good 5 to 6 times already this year. It is definitely one of my favorites. But really, the amazing story that they were able to give us with continuing with Miles Morales' story, but also giving Gwen Stacy her own kind of story in this movie also. The great, amazing animation, the way that the first movie was able to give us great animation, this movie did the exact same with giving us amazing animation and to be able to give us different styles of animation within this movie also. Like the way they're able to give us different styles of animation with characters and the different universes that we visit, and each having their own style of animation. Honestly, you can see the amazing work they put in and the hard work that they put in within this movie by going off the animation that you can see. Like I said, this is one of my favorite movies of the year. I love this movie. It had a great, amazing soundtrack. I listened to the soundtrack a few times this year already. But yeah, like this movie is definitely one of the best of the year. I think it's definitely one of the best animated movies. And really, just the rewatchability on this film. I know that this is probably the longest anime film ever, but honestly, I don't really feel the runtime of this movie, and I could just watch this movie anytime. And it's actually one of the few movies I actually went out as soon as the Blu-ray came out. I went out and bought it. There's only 2 other movies I actually bought on Blu-ray, but that's because I only bought them because of a Black Friday sale and they were on sale. This is the movie I actually paid full price just to be able to have. Honestly, it's just an amazing movie to me. I really love this movie, and cannot wait for Beyond the Spider-Verse. I'm so hyped for that movie so much. So when it comes down to it, in my personal opinion, I think this is the number 1 movie of the year. But let me know down in the comments below, what are some of the best movies of the year? What do you believe are the top 10 movies of 2023? Definitely would like to hear y'all choices. But that's going to do it for this video. Make sure to subscribe and turn notifications on so you know when I post the next one. Hope y'all all have an awesome day, and here's looking forward to 2024, seeing what those movies bring in the year. But I will see y'all all in the next one.